Are you tired of playing small and ready to step confidently into your greatness and share your unique brilliance with the world? Well, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon, and I've dedicated nearly 2 decades to empowering individuals and leaders as they confidently navigate the twists and turns of life and career transitions. If you're seeking direction, connection, or just a little push to play bigger, consider this podcast your VIP pass to a community that genuinely understands your journey. Join me every week for candid conversations and practical guidance designed to help you navigate the challenges of life and business, foster a growth mindset, and cultivate meaningful connections. It's time to embrace your inherent power, define your unique purpose, and prosper in every aspect of your life. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode. I'm your host, Sabine Gideon, and I am so thrilled to have you here with me for another week with another conversation with another female powerhouse. For those of you who are tuning in for the very first time, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. And for those of you who are longtime listeners, welcome back. Today, we have another powerful conversation with regards to our series on women in power. And this powerhouse is sure to bring some insight through her own experiences and through the work that she does. So without further ado, I'd love to welcome Kim Carpenter. Kim is a high performance leadership and executive coach, corporate trainer, and speaker, partnering with leaders and their teams to achieve breakthrough results. Kim is the founder of People at the Center, a coaching and talent development firm committed to helping businesses create people-centric cultures where people work well together, overcome big challenges together, and accomplish more than they thought was possible. With that, welcome to the show, Kim.
Thank you so much, Sabine. It is my pleasure to be here with you today.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to dig into our topic today because I know you live this and have to work through it for yourself and your clients. But before we get into that, I talked about your bio, or I shared your bio with the audience. If you would take us back, and you don't have to take us through the entire journey, but what were some of the pivotal milestones or career catalysts for you that helped you, shift and decide that this was the space that you wanted to be in?
Yeah, for sure. So my first career was actually working in ad agencies and professional services firms in New York City. So I started out there and kind of cut my teeth in Silicon Alley, as they called it in New York City's top IT firms, and was actually, this might date me a little bit, but it was actually starting some of the first digital departments inside of traditional agencies when, some of the founders were saying we need websites and we're not quite sure what that means or what that means for our clients' marketing and advertising strategies moving forward. So I spent a decade in New York City and quickly climbed the ladder and found myself at 35 in a really amazing career as a director of client services. I had an office on Park Avenue. I could see the Empire State Building out of my window, and I was not happy. I was kind of frankly miserable. My back had gone out for no reason. I had neurosurgeons telling me that I needed to operate on my back, and I refused to do it. I knew that there was something literally and figuratively out of alignment for me in my life. And so luckily I had some amazing friends and mentors around me who encouraged me to believe enough in myself to do something that I wanted to do. And I knew that I wanted to be a coach. I had gone through a divorce. I had hired a coach for myself, fell in love with the coaching process, was using it with my direct reports. And probably a pivotal moment was being criticized by one of my managers for spending too much time developing my people and trying to help them, and was told you should just fire them and move on, get somebody new. And, that was more than 20 years ago. So I feel like in a lot of ways, the reason why I left corporate, after that, I took a sabbatical, and then I actually started my own coaching practice at that time. And when I left, it was huge, right? That was a massive transition. And I just really went on this journey of discovery and learning and figuring out, how am I going to do this? I didn't see myself as an entrepreneur. Like that title gets tossed around a lot in today's world. But back then it was like, if you're not Richard Branson or, Bill Gates, then you're not an entrepreneur. Now I powerfully claim that title. So, thank you. But yeah, it was really a journey to get here.
Oh my gosh, that sounds awesome. So, how long have you been on your own and an entrepreneur in this space?
Yeah. So I guess now it's about 16 years. And for a couple of years, I did it on the side of a full-time job, or I was a contractor consultant in marketing and I did coaching on the side and until I was ready to really do it full time.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so we are in similar spaces, but different and unique, right? Because it's a lot of it is based on our own lived experiences. And so, as we think about this whole series, and we were talking about this a little bit in the green room, part of what I hope to do is to help more women, and do similar to us, right? Get to a place where if we are looking at our lives and it doesn't seem to align with who we believe ourselves to be or where we want to be or the work that we want to be doing, to be able to kind of tap into that inner well of courage, like I like to call it, to, make decisions that will impact our future and help us to move into the spaces that we want to be. And of course, that doesn't always necessarily mean that people have to quit their jobs or, start a side hustle or anything dramatic. But I do want to get the wheels turning so that we can start to look at, are we taking control of our lives, or are we operating off of, past patterns or, subconscious or the consciousness of the society around us? And so with that, as I was going on my journey of discovery, which I clearly am still on, I think we all will be on our journey of discovery until that very last breath. I started to question not just, what power was, but how do we leverage power and how does power show up for women in particular? Because we can look at any aspect of society and we can clearly see that women are not in positions of power or in the highest positions of power, but that does not negate the fact that we have power. So how can we leverage what we do have to be able to make impact or influence what's happening around us? And so that took me on a rabbit hole of really discovering all of these words that we use interchangeably with power, but really they have different meanings. So with that, I'm curious, as it relates to the words power, authority, and influence, if you had to define those three, how do you define them? And then what are some of the experiences that you've had personally with those three?
Such a beautiful question. Thank you for asking that. So let's take power first. So when I think about power, I believe that true power is really sourced from within, that no one can bestow power upon you. And we talked a little bit about this too. Like we need to empower others, right? There's something about, that makes me go, do we? And if power is truly sourced from within, it's an internally sourced, not externally referenced, then we need to look within ourselves to see where is the power loss, where is the gap between how powerful I feel and how powerful I want to feel. So that's how I would really define power. And I think that is something in some ways I've never thought about this, but we're born with that, right? Like we are born with the essence of who we are already. And you can look into a baby's eyes and see that, and that doesn't change. And I think that power, though, gets squelched throughout our lives in many different ways. And so we have to keep coming back to what's true for us, what's real for us, and hopefully have people around us that can also reflect that. So I really think about power as connected to really the essence of who we are. And it's not about being powerful over anyone else. I like to say in the work that I do also with leaders and teams is creating a power with dynamic, right? We can all be powerful. We want everybody sitting around the table to be powerful and feel powerful and to bring their best selves to whatever the initiative that we're doing. So you asked the question, how does that show up in my life?
Mhm.
Yeah. So I think that it's something that I have to keep reminding myself of. And, I do a lot of work using neuroscience and some different psychological therapeutic ideas around the psychology of selves, right? That we have all of these different aspects of ourselves. So one part of ourself is the inner judge and the inner critic that's going to tell us it's wrong, you're not doing it right, you're not powerful enough, you're not smart enough, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But we have this other deeper, wiser part of us that knows that we are and that everything is okay. And that no matter what happens, we're going to be able to get through it and work through it. So I have just cultivated a practice of really listening when that inner critic judge shows up, just labeling that like, okay, there she is again. And thanks for sharing. You got something to say. And tapping back into my true power, that deeper, wiser aspect of me that knows that I am good enough, I'm capable, I'm strong enough, whatever that is. And it's really beyond just positive affirmations. It's truly a felt sense of power.
Yeah, it's a belief, and belief ties in with emotions. So I love the fact that your philosophy is very similar to mine, that power is innate, right? It's an internal source that we get to tap into. And as you were talking about the judge and the, inner wisdom, have you done the positive intelligence? Is it positive
Oh, yeah.
PQ training? Yeah, Dr. Shazad, I'm gonna butcher his last name.
Jameen.
Yes, thank you. So he has the book Positive Intelligence, and he talks about the judge versus the sage and all the saboteurs, which are inner critics. And as you were talking, that's what that brought up for me. And you're absolutely right. We all have all of them, and it's a matter of getting to the place where we've we've done the work inside to get to that place of inner belief of who we are, where the source of our power is. I love the fact that even before, when you were talking about the people that you used to mentor and coach, and you realize that you had to invest that time. You had experience coaching, so you realize that part of us evolving and growing, and I love the term becoming your best self, but I also feel like it's overused in many ways. But part of that is this continuous growth, this continuous evolution that starts with examining, what do I believe? What do I believe to be true? Is it still true? Is it working for me? Is it not working for me? And I think so much of our lifestyles and society pushes us to do, that it's often hard to take that time to self-reflect and ask ourselves those questions, and do that deeper work and cry the ugly cry and get mad and feel all the emotions. So as it relates to power, I have a good understanding of, how you define power, how you maintain power in your life, and how you exercise it or exemplify it in the work that you do. What about authority and influence? How do you define those two, and where do you see them, or how do you see them showing up for you?
Yeah. Authority is an interesting one for me because I grew up in a military family. And so, there was a very strong definition of authority, right? I am the authority figure. My dad was the one in the military. And so I did find myself kind of pushing against the idea of authority or set rules. And I think that's part of what had me be pioneering in my life and break out and start my own business and things like that. But I think that I really appreciate Simon Sinek's view of authority when he talked in his book about leaders who eat last. And I believe that was based on, I can't remember, Marines or the Navy, but the idea that if you're a leader, your responsibility is to have the people in your charge win, not have authority over them, but really flip that perspective on its head and say, if I am the leader, if I do have authority here, that means I'm the one, maybe the final decision maker, or the responsibility, the accountability ends with me. It lives here with me. And we can't ever do any truly great things alone. We need others. We need teams. So I do see that definition of authority as the final decision rests with you, or there's an accountability there. I think that's important to take on, right? To own, and to look at how can I make that be about everyone else winning as well. And then influence, there's a lot of talk these days about how do you have influence without authority, where it's not your responsibility. You're not ultimately accountable, but you want to influence the direction of something. All of us who are change agents are trying to influence where we don't have authority. We don't get to tell that person what to do. We are not in charge of, their job, their salary, et cetera. And in today's world with highly matrix organizations, a lot of people have to work across the organization, report into different managers, bosses, manage people or teams of people that are in different divisions that they don't report to them. And we need to have influence. So again, I find it helpful to look at, power with structures. Like you and I both have power, and what are we up to? What's the bigger vision and the purpose and the why of what we're up to, and how do we work together to get there? And then how do I understand people and put people at the center of the strategic vision so that I can have influence and I can speak and communicate and listen and have dialogue about important things that we're up to so that we can co-create influence, right? Be influenced and influence so that there's more workability and we can accomplish bigger things.
Yeah, I love that. I love the breakdown of all three and your experience with them. One of the things that you've said a couple of times here, and I'm a firm believer of it as well. And even when you do the research, it shows it that, women, in the way that we express power, in the way that is most I don't want to use the word comfortable, but most adaptive to us, is really that power with of being collaborative and bringing people along. Whereas our male counterparts, their natural way to assert power is that power over. And so, especially in corporate America, as we've seen it previous decades, because it was it has been very male dominated. When we look out in corporations or organizations and we see power being exercised, oftentimes it's that power over, it's that authoritative, it's that command and control type of behavior and model. And now, more and more, we're starting to see that flipped. Like it's slowly flipping, like almost like if you had one of those, what do you call it? Those sand things.
The hourglass.
Yes,
Yeah.
the hourglass. Yes. Where now, as a result of the pandemic, good, bad, or indifferent, more people are expecting a shift, or more people are tired of the same old, same old. And so they're requiring leaders to show up differently, to exercise more of those power with muscles. So I'm seeing things, and I'm curious to how you're seeing it. I'm seeing in organizations where, strategic planning and business acumen and executive presence and all those competencies used to be at the top, where now they've dropped a bit, and now you're seeing more, empathy, compassion. Your communication was always there, right? It was more around influence, resilience, some of these competencies that seemed or were labeled soft skills or like less important. Now they've risen to the top. I'm curious, are you seeing that with your clients as well? And based on the conversations, how are they leveraging this shift to actually to make that change, that internal change?
Yeah. Yeah. I am definitely seeing I'm definitely seeing a shift to some of those things becoming more important. And I know that they're coming about for many different reasons, but I also really credit and thank the younger generations that are coming up and just saying no to how it has been. And this isn't about me giving my life over to this company. I am working to live, and I have an expectation that we're going to treat each other as equal humans around this table. And I think that so just old models of command and control aren't working the way that they used to, and something's got to give. So I'm seeing definitely, I actually have quite a few clients that are people that said, I know that I need to change, and maybe I have some bad habits from the generation that I grew up in. I'm in Gen X myself. And so it's like all of the ways of being that we were rewarded for and promoted for in the past are what people are being criticized for and called into HR for today. And so I think that that's what I'm seeing personally, is that a lot of people are, even into their late 40s, 50s, early 60s, developing a different level of self-awareness and saying, I still really care about people. I care about what I'm doing. I want my team to be happy. I want them to be engaged. And I know that means that I'm going to have to change because I'm the leader at the top. I have that authority. I am accountable for this team's success. And I know it starts with me. So I'm seeing that, and I'm seeing companies elevate. I'm seeing humans individually coming to that realization more than I'm seeing like a whole organization saying we need to change, our leadership values. I'm seeing individuals kind of pushing that up to higher levels.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I that's how change starts, right? It
Yeah.
starts with the individual person doing the work, elevating the consciousness of those around them. I have this, I think it was the Big Leap by Gary Hendricks. I don't know if you've read
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But he talks about, he has a statement of, I expand in abundant success and love and inspire others to do the same. And he talks about how when we change, right, everyone around us has to change, and that's for the good or for the better. Like that's how much influence we have, or innate power that we have, that oftentimes we don't even recognize it, we don't see it, and we don't know it. And I just feel that we're in this space, and I don't know if it's portal is the right word. I keep using portal because that's the only thing that I can think of, but I just think that we're in this space where more and more women are coming into this consciousness and this awareness. I feel like we've always known, right, that we were powerful, that we mattered, that we were valuable, and all these things, even though the outward society kept giving us evidence that, like, yeah, sure, sure, you matter, but over here, or you matter this much. And now I'm seeing more and more women step into that space, that mindset of, wait a minute, like I not only just that I matter, but who I am, my brilliance, everything that I bring to the table, it's valuable. So I say all that to say my hope, or my optimistic vision, is that as more women are elevated into actual positions of authority, whether that be in organizations, whether that be in the government and school systems, you name it, that we'll start to see that change and we'll start to see that shift. But it's coming into that awareness that you deserve to be in that position of authority, and that just because you're in a position of authority does not mean that you have to change who you are to match the current model that exists, but that the essence of who you are is enough, and it is valuable, and you can lead and be just as effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, really beautiful. I'm totally with you. And actually, I'm also a core guide or a coach at an organization called Chief, mm-hmm. that is dedicated to elevating women into positions of power and keeping them there. I think that's the motto. And so I work with a lot of groups of senior executive women who've already made it to the VP or C-suite level, and there's still work to do. So I think that, women, and we're talking about women here, but I think it should be said also, like, we need to have inclusion of all types, that there are less men of color in the C-suite than white women in the C-suite. And so I think there's just work to do in general for our culture to really embrace including difference and embracing difference, and for women to really step in and claim and own their innate power to, like you said, there is something that does have to shift and change in order to be able to hold that, hold that power and authority, and operate from that place of knowing. So
Yeah.
I love that our missions are so aligned.
Yes, I do too. I do too. And so I'm curious. I know before you talked about when your judge or your inner critic comes up, right? You've recognize enough of the voice to be able to say thank you and go sit down somewhere. But are there other things that you do on a daily basis to maintain that practice, to maintain that? Because we know every day is not a great day, right? Every day we don't wake up, being like coaching ourselves, right? And so there are those days where we have to try a little harder just because I feel like, I don't know about you, but not that I do my self work for others, but I know that if I don't do my self work, not only will I be a disservice to myself, but it's a disservice to those who I, serve in the capacity as a coach. So I'm wondering if there are any daily practices that you've put into place to help support you in maintaining that mindset and maintaining that attitude and that knowing of who you are and the power that you carry.
Yeah, I really embrace meditation. And I told you that when I left corporate, I took a year-long sabbatical. And one of the places I went to was actually India. I stayed in an ashram and was just learning about meditation, studying some other things as well, the science of motivation, and they had really interesting programs there. And so, from my late 20s, I've been meditating, and even if it's 10 minutes, or 50 minutes, it doesn't have to be sitting for hours and hours, but just having that. And at this point, I find that I just naturally kind of and come back to what I call like my center, like come back into myself. So usually we're living out here, we're having our conversations out here, right? So just coming back to myself and resting and like, okay, what's actually happening? And I love that question. What's actually happening? What's actually happening? Because usually it's our brain going off into stories about what's happening, or assumptions or interpretations, or, oh my gosh, this person thinks this and this and this and this about me, instead of what's actually happening is I just said something, that person just said something, or I said something and I wish I'd said it a little differently. Okay, that's what's actually happening. So I think that, along with the judge, just kind of recognizing when I am not in my center, I am not grounded in my power, and then getting back there. So that's something I do for myself. But I think it's important to say, and I know you're very much a proponent of community and gathering women together, people together. I think community is probably the most impactful thing that I have in relation to this, because it's like phone a friend, and I've got multiple amazing women leaders who are like on speed dial for me, or I can send a text message, I can be on a phone call, people who are there to say, I know you're up to big things in the world and I've got your back. And it's going to be scary sometimes. And when we stand up to say something different than the status quo, or we're taking a stand for something, people are not going to like that sometimes. And so I think it's just so important. So I wanted to say that too, right? Like I've got my practices, but then I've got my people.
Yeah. So important. So important. So I'm gonna speak on two of the things that you said there in terms of the what's happening question. I love that. I absolutely love that. I'm gonna have to incorporate that. I maybe about 5 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, I was going through like a dark period. And I was praying every day, like, all right, let's get an answer here. Let's get an answer. And I remember hearing there's a difference between truth and reality. And at the time, I really didn't understand like what that meant. And the more that I dug into my subconscious or my spirit with that question, it was more of, there's the reality that you're experiencing. So that's your outer world or your circumstance. And then there's the truth of who you are. You get to determine whether or not this reality defines who you are. And it gave me that, I don't know, that boost that I needed to start declaring who I was, to start declaring from a place of faith, from a place of knowledge and understanding of who I am at the core. And I just started speaking the truth of who I was. And what seemed so overwhelming, right, in terms of my circumstances and the darkness that surrounded me, it literally started to dissipate because now it was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is happening, but I'm still powerful. I am still, the daughter of the great creator. And so I love that you asked that question because I think even in the day to day, right, you get an email. and you're like, wait a minute, I'm sorry, what? Right? Just
Right.
asking that question of, okay, what's really going on here can help you in that moment. Or you're sitting in a meeting and you feel like your voice is not being heard or that, you're being talked over. Those are things, that's a really great question that you can in that moment tune into. And then the other piece about community, oh my gosh, I will say in the last 2 years, I have learned how critical community is. Just, I think earlier this week, I did a podcast interview, one of my live ones, and I was interviewing someone who, I've never met her in person, but we've stayed connected via LinkedIn. We've had several hours worth of conversations. And at the end, she just started to speak into me and affirm me in a way that I was not expecting and in a way that I needed that particular day, that particular morning. And so I wholeheartedly agree with you that, they say the you are the sum of the 5 people that are the closest to you. I would spread that number out a little bit more. But, think about the people, for those of you who are listening, think about the people that are surrounding you. Are they the ones who uplift you? Are they the ones who mirror back to you your greatness? Or are they the ones that remind you that you're not so great and that you have this flaw or that flaw? And really assess, I do believe that every level that we are stepping into or every time we're moving into a new level, it does require an assessment of our circle. Who are we around? And you know this, right? We don't move into a new level. We become the person who can stand and maintain at that level. At least that's what I believe. So I'm curious, and now I'm going to pause because I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on that. With the notion of when we're looking to be better leaders or we're looking to be more influential, it doesn't start with I want to be a better leader, or I want to be more influential, but it starts with what do I need? That question of who do I need to become in order to be a better leader or in order to be more influential?
Yeah, I love that, Sabine. So much wisdom in all of what you're saying. And what I've seen is that the action or the results follows the energy and the intention. So we actually need to put ourselves in the mindset, in the framework of that, where we're going. And I'm pointing up because, that next level of leadership and ascending to that next version of ourselves, the evolution of that comes from saying, I declare I am that already. And then you're going to see the results, the recognition, the acknowledgement, all the external referencing of that after you do that. And I think where we sometimes fall short, especially as women, is one, we're promoted based on what we've already accomplished, where men are promoted based on what they're capable of doing, their potential. So we're taught that, well, you can't do it. You can't do the next thing until you've done it already, but that's not accurate. So we need to step into, I am that leader. I am whatever it is for you who's listening here, whatever it is that you really want to claim for yourself. And then you'll see the promotion come or the pay come or the team starting to spark up and rallying around your vision. You have to be it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agree. And I think I love that you brought that up because I do think a lot of it is conditioning too, right? Just because of what you said, where, men get promoted or they're evaluated or, assumptions are made about them based on their potential. Whereas women, we have to prove it. Even when you look at funding for women businesses, you name
Yeah.
it. And so it puts us in a space subconsciously where we are constantly trying to prove ourselves. We
Yeah.
are always trying to prove ourselves. And so that proving, right, when you're in a state of constantly trying to prove yourself, that wears away at your self-esteem, that wears away at your self-confidence. You will burn yourself out to prove that you can do it, where the real tool or the real trick, and I see this and I always say Bob, that's my name for my my white male counterpart. Bob has all the confidence in the world. Bob has done nothing. There's no evidence to support Bob's confidence, but his confidence alone gets him in spaces. And so, I hope for those who are listening, you're catching this pattern, this theme here from the people that I've been speaking to, and outside of the series too, that the things that have allowed them to move into the spaces that they wanted to be in or elevate at the levels that they wanted to. Yes, of course, it was hard work. Yes, of course, it was, showing up, being who they said they were going to be, doing what they said that they were going to do. But it also resulted, or it also came from them doing a lot of internal self-work. It is very hard for us to reach whatever new level we want without doing that self-work. And in the cases where we do end up getting to that space, we will self-sabotage and bring ourselves back without doing that work. So I hope you've been picking up what Kim has been putting down during this session here, that it is possible for us to continue to grow, for us to continue to develop, for us to hold those positions of power, exercise authority and influence. But it first starts with us doing that self-examination and then being willing to do the work that's needed so that we can get to the places where, people want to follow us, people want to support us, people want to elevate us to the places that we want. So with that, Kim, I do have another question for you as it relates to, and we talked a little bit about the next generation. Given what you've experienced, what are some of your thoughts in terms of supporting the next generation of women who are stepping into leadership or who have leadership aspirations? What tips would you give them as they're navigating what this looks like?
Such a great question. Hmm. I think what I would say is to really learn how to listen, actually, and learn how to listen to respond versus react so that you can be fully you in a conversation, whatever that is, at work, and keep your eyes open. Learn to notice, okay, what's happening around me, what's being said, and then what's actually happening. What are the dynamics here inside of whatever you're doing, the organization, or if you're a founder, what are the dynamics here? How can I keep my eyes open? How can I stay curious about what's happening? Because I think that it's easy to just kind of, put your head down and go roaring into, charging into some situations and have the determination, like, I'm going to climb the ladder, or to just sit back and be like, well, this isn't for me. I'm not good enough, or I'm not capable, or succumb to the imposter syndrome, which frankly, everyone, we all have, and you will have for the rest of your life. I always say, every time Oprah goes to create her next evolution of her empire, there's some part of her that questions, can I do this? Really?
Right.
Can I do that? Right. Like, we all have it. Michelle Obama, I was listening to her beautiful book, The Light We Carry, I believe, like she talks about it, right? It's like, okay, if Michelle Obama can be going through that, then it's not so strange that I'm going through that. So I think those are some of the things. And I know they're not very concrete, but there's some things that I think that I would have told my younger self. Keep your eyes open, listen, be curious, learn to listen.
Yeah, I think those are great things. I mean, they sound simple, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean that they're easy. And also, when I was coming into, yes, I had some really great mentors, but we weren't talking about imposter syndrome, 10, 15, 20 years ago, right? Like that, it was a thing we were all experiencing, but it had not yet been quote unquote diagnosed, so to speak, right? Or
Mm.
at least not in my circle. And then, secondly, because there were and there still are, there's still the women, the number of women in these higher leadership roles, they're so few and far between, or even women of color or anything, any diversity really, that you just assume that these people had something special, right? Like there is something special about them, and that's not me. Or the only reason why these people made it is because of X. And so I think it's important to have, conversations like this where you and I, who are still evolving, can say, hey, like, yes, we've experienced it. We are still experiencing. I experienced it yesterday. So, that people can see that, okay, this is not, there's no final destination here, that we're all learning and we're all growing. But at least I've always been a big believer that when if I can see it, right, then I can start to imagine myself in that space. And I think that the leaders who had the biggest impact on me were the ones who I knew their story, I knew their background, I knew, what they had to climb through to get to where they were. That gave me hope to say, oh, okay, well, if they can do it, then I can do it. So my encouragement to those of you who are listening, even if you're not managing a team directly, or maybe you have some junior people on your team, to share your story, share your journey. There is so much power that gets transferred when we are honest, when we are vulnerable. Vulnerability is not just a cliche. When we are authentic and we can tell people those messy middles or those ugly parts of our journey, that helps us to see how far we've come. And it also allows others to, have hope of, what their journey can look like for them. So thank you for that, Kim. And we're going to go into the Blitz session, and then I'm going to let you go because I could keep you here for another couple of hours talking to you. It sounds like you already shared a little bit about what you would tell your younger self if you could go back and give her some advice as you think ahead, right? 50, 60, however many years from now, when you are looking back at your life, what do you want the narrative to be? What do you want to be most proud of?
Mm. Well, I am, at People at the Center, we're just on a mission to put more humanity back into the business environment. And so, really having moved the needle on that in a significant way is our mission. And that's what I would love to be known for. People feel like they're valued and honored at work, which is frankly where we spend the most amount of our time and life energy. I think we've kind of lost the plot in our country a little bit around that. And so that's what I would really love to be known for.
I love that. And then as far as books, because I am a big believer that leaders are readers. I'm curious, has there been a book or a couple of books that have been pivotal for you in your growth and development?
So the favorite book that I am just diving into right now is Amy C. Edmondson's Right Kind of Wrong. And she talks about the value of making mistakes. And it's based on a research perspective. So I feel like this is such a huge thing for organizations and leaders to embrace at this time, is how can we embrace making mistakes, being wrong, not having that be the end of the world, not having people withhold that information because they're afraid for their jobs. Like, let's lean in and talk about the mistakes. We can learn from them and actually innovate and push things forward.
Oh, I love that. I am adding that to the list. I've been on a rampage with regards to redefining failure in organizations, because I think that that's at the root of our society. I mean, we're told to avoid failure for as little kids, and the way that shows up and is detrimental to us as adults, and especially in corporate environments. So thank you for sharing that. I am adding that to the list, and I will add that to the show notes for those of you who are listening. So how can the audience, if they are looking to connect with you, to learn more about your amazing organization and work, where can they connect with you? Where do you hang out on social?
Yeah. So I am on LinkedIn all day, every day. So it's linkedin.com/in/just Kim Carpenter, all one word. And also, of course, our website, peopleatthecenter.com. So I'd love to hear from anyone. And I authentically mean that. Our core value is connection. And so I'd love to connect with you.
Awesome. I will include all of those links in the show notes. So be sure to check that out. Kim, thank you so much for your time, for your wisdom, for your work.
Well, you are so welcome. It's my absolute pleasure. And I just want to throw it right back at you. Thanks for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you. And so with that, we will be back next week with another female powerhouse. Until then, have a great rest of the day. Take care. Hope you enjoyed this week's episode. If you found today's conversation helpful or got a piece of insight that you plan to implement in your life, I'd love to hear from you. Connect with me on LinkedIn at Sabine Gideon and send me a message, or feel free to leave a review on either Apple or Spotify. I also invite you to share this episode with anyone in your network, another powerhouse possibly, who you think might benefit from today's conversation. Lastly, as always, any links, any resources, or any upcoming training is included in the show notes, so be sure to check that before you leave today. Until we chat again, have a blessed and powerful week.